Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is easily one of the most underappreciated shows on television right now. The animation is a cut above the rest, the writing is hilarious, and the visuals and storytelling overall have impressed me quite more than I thought it was going to after seeing the initial trailers and stuff for it. But I've yet to really organize an opinion on it, so let's go into how I'm going to handle doing that, shall we? What's up, guys, gals, and non-binary pals? My name is Cody Hansel, and I'm going to have a really quick story for you all, right? A friend of mine got me into watching Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a little while ago. I really put off watching it, quite a bit. There's other shows I was watching, and in general, I didn't feel the real immense need to do so, and honestly, I should have done it a lot sooner. After all this time, I finally got into watching it, and I was very much impressed. And whenever I was getting the idea to start talking about it as a video, I decided to, with my friends in a Discord group, go look at some reviews, check out the IMDb page, because I was looking at the cast and everything. And I noticed that it had a surprisingly low review score, a 5.1 out of 10, which, first and foremost, what? Excuse me? Okay, a 5.1 out of 10. I figured people were going to dislike this show because it was so different from the other TMNT, but I didn't think it was going to be this much. I think it was going to be to this degree. But I decided, with my friends, to dive into some of these reviews. At first, I was frustrated at some of the 1 out of 10 reviews. I made an initial video where I completely forgot to record the audio. It was mostly a rant, an angry rant at these people. And then I took a couple days off, right? I decided, you know what, I'll come back and I'll re-record the video later. And as I was waiting, I thought, okay, maybe I'm not approaching this from the right perspective. Maybe I shouldn't go on some kind of rant about this. Maybe there's a way to pull some positive out of the negative. Because I noticed myself in the original video as I was talking, responding to things that I hadn't thought about myself. Different aspects of it didn't stand out to me. So we're going to go through a couple of these reviews, and I'm going to point out the things that were pointed out to me thanks to some of these low-star reviews. And it's not that I agree with them, it's that they brought up points that I didn't think of. Also, I'm not going to be showing the people who made these reviews. I'm not here to call out people on their opinions. I just want to use their statements to inform and build off my own. This review, 1 out of 10, says, first off, the turtles aren't even brothers anymore. They are all different species of turtles, so the family bond is lost. I hadn't considered that element of it. I had acknowledged during my time watching the show that they weren't all the same kind of turtle, but my brain just told me it was a design thing, right? It wasn't so much a reason for the turtles all being different as it was like, oh, they just look different for different designs, right? So as much as I disagree with this implication that a family has to be related by blood to all be related and therefore form a trusting family bond, I hadn't considered the fact that this just plays into the fact that the turtles are all adopted. An adopted family can be a hodgepodge of different races and genders and peoples. That's really beautiful in a way and reassuring for maybe a young kid who is growing up in an orphanage or as a foster child or recently adopted with a family that they don't know. And talking on this iteration of the turtles and how it plays into a family dynamic of like an adopted family, it goes even deeper in that, where the turtles are voiced by 2 white actors and 2 black actors. So you have 4 people of different races that have this strong family bond. And I think that sells really deeply into the theme of the show, because the turtles were already adopted. A mouse did not have turtle babies. Splinter already adopted the turtles, but now they're just expanding on the fact that adopted families aren't always the same race. They rarely are. That's just really nice to see. It can be literally anybody, just so long as you form a bond with them and you can call them family. I hadn't considered that, but this brought that to my eyes. Cool. Right here it says, Leonardo is now a sarcastic nitwit, not the struggling leader that demonstrates quality of character that we all love. Raphael is now the leader, which is kind of boring because he has always been the muscle and the rebel of the team. I also generally disagree with this idea, but I see where they're coming from. Like, yeah, Leonardo does start off kind of as a sarcastic nitwit, but all plays into the fact that he's the face man, he's the talker, right? He's the one that gets in and gets out, hopefully without having to do any action. He just uses words for the most part. And the point where Raphael is not a leader, which is kind of boring, I also disagree with. Raph doesn't have Leo's charisma. Raph isn't smart. He's good at fighting. He's a good combatant, but he's just not an intelligent person. That's not who he is. But he's a savant when it comes to planning and getting his team to actually, go do something, go get something done. And he spearheads a lot of that throughout the show. And I think it's interesting that the struggling leader is Raph in this case, because sure, Leo may have been the struggling leader beforehand, but that's all he was. He was only the struggling leader. He didn't have much of a personality outside of that, besides cracking one-liners every once in a while, and all the turtles do that all the time in the old series. Also, they say they changed April O'Neil from a white redhead to an African American, which I don't understand because it's the base of her character. That feels poorly worded. I think I know where they're coming from on this. Her base design is typically a white redhead. And yes, they did change her to an African American in this. But the placement of the wording makes it sound like she's a white woman, and being a white woman is the base of her character. She is character white woman. I don't think they meant that. The wording on this feels poor. But they also go on to say, why not just create a new character that's African American? I agree with that to a point. There is this modern day media trend of taking characters that have been one race in previous iterations of something and flipping that on its head and then being a different race in the new iteration. It does come off at times as cash grabby or just appealing to a certain demographic, which, if done improperly, can be bad. That being said, this version of April O'Neil is the best version of April O'Neil, in my opinion. She's tenacious, hilarious. Her design is awesome. She has the coolest design of any April ever. And I feel like a lot of people are going to be able to relate to her. A lot of young girls and young women are going to be able to relate to this version of April, who is struggling to find herself throughout the show. And I hadn't considered the race swap thing. I was just going to say, oh, she's the best version of April ever. I hadn't really dug into what that means from a racial standpoint. And I like that he's pointing out things like this. I don't love so much their father has been changed from the traditional sensei rat to a loafing overweight gerbil. Yeah, but there's a character arc there, and this was posted on December 3rd, 2018. So maybe they didn't get far enough into the show for that character arc to be revealed. He then also goes on to make statements of like, this biggest problem is that it shows Nickelodeon at its worst. They look like Teen Titans or Insipid, makes a little best SpongeBob SquarePants and slap TMNT on it, and make a show that isn't entertaining in the slightest. Generally, when it comes to entertainment, it's all subjective. So trying to objectively say that this thing isn't entertaining in the slightest is a pretty hard call, and I think a false one at that. If it was true, I believe more people would be agreeing with him and the show would have a much lower overall rating. That being said, it's got flashy colors, which entertains little kids. It's got good writing that I think even adults will giggle and chuckle at every once in a while. And the visuals are just absolutely stunning, with some of the best animation on television, if not the best animation on television right now. I know I said I was going to go into being contrarian with this guy, but... Also, he says, this is the biggest reason the show can get the shell out of here. Oh, great. You're a viewer that made an inside joke that references the show. Oh my god. Totally deserve that. I'm gonna throw away all my shell puns now. Oh yeah, this guy revealed to me that John Cena is Baron Draxum, and I love that. I love that John Cena is this big goat dude. The last thing I'm going to touch on is this review says, I get that its format is aimed towards kids, but this 10-minute no story format is just sad. 10-minute no story format. In the review, they go on to say that they've watched every episode up to this point, and they posted this on January 3rd, 2019, which I believe was about 16 or 18 episodes in, right? They truly watched every episode, even though it is a 10-minute format, which, by the way, 10-minute format doesn't really matter if the story is put together well. There's plenty of shows that have done excellent 10-minute format storytellings. Two recent ones are Steven Universe and Amphibia, both putting together really intricate and really well-organized stories while still only having, 11-minute episodes. That's not a flaw if it's done correctly, and those shows have done it correctly, and I believe Rise has done it correctly. But to go back into that, saying that the show has a no story format is kind of flawed when in the very first episode, we get a huge showing of story. We see that the turtles aren't immediate heroes in the fact that they ignore a mob trade to go dive into a rooftop pool. We see that they're not trained fighters. They get destroyed in the first fight they're in, and they're flobbling around the whole time. We also get shown Draxum, that he seems to recognize the turtles in some degree, and that it's hinted towards a story. Not to mention, the very next episode introduces the Foot Clan. And why would they introduce these new villains that obviously have an agenda, if you watch the episode, and not continue that? They're sprinkling in the tiny story bits and expanding on them as they go out. Stating that the 10-11 minute episode format depraves the show of its storytelling ways is closed-minded. I think that they realized the show had the 10-minute episode blocks and just assumed that there wasn't going to be any story payoffs for any of the episodes. And as the show has gone on, more and more of the show has had a stronger and stronger story arc. That's how these shows are. They have to start off with more splintered episodes that stupid, reel you into the world and introduce a whole bunch of characters and villains that you're going to be seeing recurring throughout the show. And then we lay into the actual building of a narrative. And it feels like he just ignored that. With all that said, and with these two reviews looked over, what's the lesson we can take from it? And what's my thoughts on Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Read reviews as you form your own opinions. I have in the past been very bad about being really gung-ho with my immediate thoughts on something, right? And just slamming headfirst into something without considering every angle of it, and really going into detail as I write out a review or plan out my thoughts for a video. And that's something that I'm working on, and I believe this is a good exercise to help that. It opens your eyes to things you hadn't considered, like the expanded theme of adoption that I mentioned earlier, while also letting you see the viewpoints of people who have paid attention to things in a different way that you had, or disagreed with you on a front. Because even if I didn't necessarily agree with something that they said, I might have agreed with another point, and that would influence my overall opinion. I obviously cherry-picked these reviews so that I could slam on them a little bit and get the ideas out there that I wanted in very, very obvious ways. But there were a few reviews that opened my eyes to different topics. And whereas my overall thoughts on the show didn't come down, I do believe the show is still a 10 out of 10, it did open my eyes to some issues that luckily got addressed later on in the series. And as far as my final thoughts on Rise, God, is it a beautiful show. The animation is phenomenal. The fight scenes are sporadic and kinetic and so inventive with what they do with camera angles and movement. The comedy is really, really funny, both the written jokes and the visual jokes, the over-top expressions, the slapstick humor that fits so well into this style of show. And April's new character is fantastic, and what they did with Splinter is great. I love his character arc, and the new arcs that they're introducing into season 2. Finally, something I want to point out for the sake of anybody who may have had these similar opinions, because I feel like a lot of people dropped out of the show fairly early. This show is called Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Rise. It's their beginning. They're not already trained ninjas who know how to fight and survive, and we're just getting more lessons from Master Splinter as they learn them. They really don't know how to fight. All they do in the beginning of the show is copy things that they've seen on television, and it's even stated very blatantly by Baron Draxid in the first episode, accidentally impressive. They don't know what they're doing. He recognizes that they're not trained. They just have a natural skill about them that, if harnessed and focused, could become something great. Anything that comes up here in the beginning where, for example, Leo not being a leader, he might become the leader at some point. Raph might give him that mantle. It's not being implied in the show, but he's definitely earning the trust now of somebody who might become a leader or step into a leadership position later on. He might become Raph's second in command or the fill-in whenever Raph isn't available. And then with April's character, I saw a few nitpicky complaints about this. April hasn't figured out what she wants to do with her life yet. She's 16, so hey girl, maybe don't worry about it. But she doesn't know what she wants to do, right? She doesn't know what her job is, what her career is. So you see her doing a bunch of nitpicky jobs throughout the show, just bouncing around from one career path to another, but the show has little hints of her future as a reporter. She loves another one of the characters who's a reporter. She looks up to that character, and she talks every now and again about getting a camera, and she does take quite a few pictures throughout the show, like selfies and stuff, because teenagers in 2020. But I think it's great that along with the turtles finding their path and how they're going to be heroes, we have this other character who's supposed to ground us to the reality of the world, trying to find her own career path in the human world, in what we would see. But yeah, that's everything I have to say. I think this is a really fun exercise. I urge you all to try it if you're, trying to get in the writing reviews and breaking down media. It's important to bring in the information that surrounds that media. And that was a lesson that it took this failed video first attempt to learn. With all that being said, thank you for watching. Subscribe here on YouTube, leave a like, drop a comment. Who's your favorite turtle? Mine's Donnie, and he might have depression. I don't really think so, but I thought the sign was funny. Also, if you guys can help me find more letters, please. I don't know where all my eyes went. I've been streaming quite a bit lately, so go follow me over on Twitch. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, where I post pictures and funny goofs and stuff. Follow a ton of artists, so you'll be seeing me retweet a whole lot of art. And that's it. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you later.